Today, bright and early at 8 AM, we got our first episode of Disney's newest Marvel series, Loki. True to form, it was chaotic, theatrical and light-hearted, but with a few touches of some more serious and quite sad elements. The first episode introduced us to Loki's situation, post-Endgame escape, and also introduced us to the wonderful bureaucratic world of the TVA. After a bit of banter and scene setting, including Loki signing off on a document of everything he's ever said, and him being stripped naked by a semi-cute, semi-psychotic looking robot, we get our first proper explanation of what the TVA is and what it does. In a lovely, slightly dystopian looking infomercial, we're told that the TVA enforces the rule of the all-knowing timekeepers and the so-called sacred timeline. Anyone who diverges from this decided set of events are labelled as variants and taken to court, where they're tried for their deviance, though it doesn't appear that the court has any intention of giving people what we would call a fair trial. Loki is lucky enough to avoid somewhat certain death by resetting when Mobius M. Mobius steps in and asks if he can borrow him for one of his investigations. It seems that a variant has been slaughtering TVA workers known as Minutemen, and we see the latest attack has left a chapel in 1500s France strewn with corpses. Loki quickly learns that his magic is kind of useless when in the confines of the TVA HQ, and Mobius subjects him to a rerun of his greatest hits, whilst accusing him of being not an agent of mischief, but of death and pain instead. Oof. Now, Loki does not like what Mobius shows him and says to him, and when Mobius briefly leaves the room to deal with a situation, the god of mischief uses the window of opportunity to escape his holding room in search of freedom. The episode wraps up with the revelation that Mobius wants Loki's help tracking down this rogue variant, because the variant is Loki himself, but from another timeline. We see Rogue Loki's newest murderous trick as he sets fire to a bunch of Minutemen in 1858 Oklahoma, ending with an ominous shot of the hooded, silhouetted figure that definitely reminds me of this meme. So with that quick summary covered, how about we start breaking it down into its most important parts, starting with the TVA. The Time Variance Authority is basically a huge bureaucratic organisation that keeps tabs on as many realities as possible in the multiverse, attempting to keep things in check by destroying rogue timelines caused by what they call Nexus events. It's staffed by bland, non-confrontational employees who live their entire lives to do their job in this office building. When we have that bit where Casey reveals that he doesn't know what a fish is when Loki threatens him to gut him like a fish, it kind of reminds us that these guys have really never seen past the four walls of the TVA. Aside from the desk jockeys, we have the all-knowing timekeepers. 3 timekeepers have determined what is the proper timeline, aka the sacred timeline, and any deviance from that must be eliminated. The sacred timeline at this point can be assumed to be the specific one that governs the MCU, the one that allowed for Thanos to be defeated in Endgame when the Avengers went all mad lad on chronology. In fairness, you can see why they would want to defend that, because with all the intricacies that the writers had to account for when assembling the iconic rise and fall of Thanos, really the last thing we need is for one rogue god to go and mess it all up. Which actually leads us on to the next thing, Loki's death. One of the most upsetting moments in Infinity War was Thanos' brutal killing of Loki, and we're forced to relive that moment alongside him in this first episode. Although for him, it's not quite reliving, as this version of Loki hasn't lived that yet. Anyone would be upset to see their own death. I know I wouldn't want to, especially if it was done in such a cruel and callous way as to be throttled and then have your neck snapped. We now know that even though it was a horrible death, it wasn't the end to Loki, with his brief appearance in Endgame allowing for him to branch off into a whole new realm of possibilities. It seems in this branch we're going to get to know Loki a whole lot better, which isn't something you can usually expect to say after a character's death. In one interview with Empire magazine, Loki actor Tom Hiddleston said that the show would be placing emphasis on identity and the multitudes of separate identities that one person, or god, can possess within themselves. In that way, it's quite similar to WandaVision because that show allowed for us to see the multitudes that Wanda contained within herself, not just in terms of the powers she possessed, but also the mental capability she had to deal with her grief. The Avengers' intervention in Endgame has given Loki a new lease of life, literally, and now we get to see him realise all that he can become. On that note, let's have a little look at the character growth here and what kind of thing we can be expecting from the series as it comes. Something that was really noticeable even in this very first episode was that Hiddleston wasn't kidding about containing multitudes. We see him really going through the motions as he navigates the TVA, going from his normal, cocky, self-assured self right through to being absolutely distraught at the idea that he caused his own mother's death. It really hit hard when he was tasked with processing not only his mother's death but his own, and he was told to reevaluate his own purpose in life. "I don't enjoy hurting people," he revealed. "I do it because I have to, because it's part of the illusion. It's the cruel, elaborate trick conjured by the weak to inspire fear." And now we're seeing some real self-awareness developing. What has really set these few Marvel series apart from the rest of the stuff we tend to see in the MCU is their focus on really developing a certain set of characters. Now, I'm not saying that we haven't got to know our characters through the movies over the years, but more that the approach Marvel seems to be taking with these Disney Plus series is to expand on the complex emotions and issues faced by a small number of characters. A lot of people have commented that it's actually really nice to see Marvel moving away from their classic formula of we fight a bad guy, we make a few jokes, and then that's it, we're done. The strongest parts of WandaVision and of The Falcon and the Winter Soldier came when we were able to see parts of the characters that we haven't before, and really explore their vulnerabilities and their emotions. We felt like we came out of the other end of those series knowing our characters so much better, and hopefully we'll see the same sort of development here by the end of this series. Moving away from the abstract to the material now, we have got to talk about the Infinity Stones and the multiverse. I swear if I listened hard enough I could probably hear the collective gasp from across the UK when we all at the same time saw that little drawer in Casey's cart thing be opened and there was just Infinity Stones everywhere, because what? Especially when he went on to joke that they have so many of them that some of the office workers use them as paperweights. It's like in The Simpsons when they say you can pinpoint the moment that his heart breaks in two. You can almost see the exact second that Loki realizes that the TVA is not messing around. They are one of the most powerful organizations he's ever encountered. To them, Infinity Stones are literally worthless. Casey's cart is full of Easter egg type things. We've got time stones, reality stones, a couple of power stones, space stones, mind stones, but no soul stone. According to some keen eyes on Reddit, there's also 2 different kinds of arc reactors sitting alongside an ancient knife, a couple of war medals, all that kind of thing. The important thing here is that it really puts everything into perspective. It made Loki realize really in the scale of things how minuscule and unimportant he is, which I think is probably quite a new feeling for him. Timekeepers, multiverse, nexus, all these words would have sent us absolutely crazy had they appeared in, say, WandaVision. The TVA has control over some real crazy stuff, and now we've just got to see how it all plays out. On that note, actually, we're going to bring this one to a close. Obviously, there's a million other things in the episode that you may have picked up on, and if anything is driving you particularly crazy, then drop it in the comments below because I would love to know what everyone's talking about. Be sure to keep an eye on whatculture.com over the next few days because I'm absolutely sure there'll be some banging content coming out about this. Anyway, I've been Amy from What Culture, and I'll catch you next time.